and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. So by sheer coincidence, last week's episode was a follow-up to my 13th episode, and this week's is a follow-up to the 14th. Of course, if this was a true Star Trek review, it'd be a follow-up to the 47th. Star Trek has a special place in my heart, from the stuff I love to the stuff I hate, to the stuff that I have very mixed feelings about, but appreciate nonetheless. I've been watching it for as long as I can remember, and for the last 10 years, this show has taken a look at a crap ton of Star Trek material. And as such, Atop the Fourth Wall is proud to present Star Trektember, where we'll do some sequel episodes to previous Star Trek reviews. And of course, we begin with the second issue of the very first Star Trek comic I ever covered. You know, that was that weird time a Star Trek comic came to life and tried to kill me. You know, in retrospect, I never did find out why that happened. Probably should look into that at some point. Oh yeah, and I defeated it using magic. That's totally appropriate for a Star Trek review. Also, yeah, my old Nintendo DS was a tricorder. Starfleet engineers can turn rocks into replicators. You improvise with what you got. Anyway, DC's Star Trek #1. To give more of a history lesson of the comics at the time than I gave back in the day, Marvel had the license to Star Trek stuff after the release of the motion picture. Unfortunately, due to some legal stuff occurring, they couldn't use anything from the original series or animated series in the comic, so they were limited to original stuff or anything that was featured in the slow motion picture. Considering how lackluster the response to the film was, and the series' own struggling to keep readers interested in it, Marvel eventually let the license lapse, having only produced about 18 comics, including the adaptation of the movie, and a bizarre two-parter where they encounter a haunted house in space that was actually a plot by Klingons to take the Enterprise to learn the secrets of their new warp engines. Comic books, even licensed ones, are friggin' weird. Because of the lukewarm response to the motionless picture, nobody was really interested in getting an adaptation of Star Trek II made. And instantly they regretted that, as, of course, Wrath of Khan was a huge success. In the bidding war that followed, DC emerged triumphant and got the license to make Star Trek comics, producing material for 12 years. This time, they were allowed to use anything previously established in Trek lore, and oddly enough, still didn't produce that adaptation, leaving that to IDW to make their unnecessary craptastic one in 2009. Because sometimes it is better never rather than late. The first issue of DC's series was not very good. It feels like they were overcompensating for the lack of an adaptation of Wrath of Khan by friggin' referencing it a whole bunch. In some cases, it's fine, since it takes place right after the death of Spock, so that incident's still fresh, but Kirk's log wholesale lifts lines from it for no reason. It introduces a few new characters into the mix, like the unfortunately named Ensign Bearclaw, who of course served alongside Lieutenant Twinkie and Commander Zebracake, and the dialogue was just off. It felt a bit forced or dated, feeling more like an old episode of the original series as opposed to the movie's writing of the characters, which felt more natural, and yet at the same time refined. The plot concerned the Enterprise investigating the destruction of the USS Gallant, done so by the Klingons, who were able to outmaneuver ships by using wormholes to jump around quickly. Looking deeper into it, Kirk Savick and a new character named Ensign Bryce took a shuttle into a wormhole, or rather, they initiated a stupid plan wherein Savick entered the wormhole with a shuttle, while Kirk and Bryce beamed out in spacesuits for whatever reason. And there they found a Klingon space station sitting right inside the wormhole, which would be really shocking and terrible if space stations weren't, you know, meant to stay in one spot. I thought I had a physical copy of it, but I can't find it. Even without that, though, let's dig into DC's Star Trek #2 and see how they'll get out of this one. cover is fine, featuring Kirk in a spacesuit with a rather odd pose as he seems to either cling to or be pushing against a spaceship. This really puts the phrase "get out and push" into perspective. Trapped aboard a Klingon warship, Kirk fights for his life. I mean, if he was standing on the hull of the ship, we could consider it trapped aboard it. But as it is... man, space is really purple today. We open where the first story left off. Captain's log, stardate 8149.2. To uncover the secret of the undetectable Klingon fleet, Ensign Bryce and I have entered wormhole space and discovered there a Klingon station with enough firepower to seize this sector of Federation space for themselves. Naturally, I felt it necessary to make a log entry about it. This base is in direct violation of the Organian peace treaty. How could the Organians have permitted? Kirk is referring to the events of the episode Errand of Mercy, where a group of godlike beings called the Organians basically forced the Federation and Klingon forces into a peace treaty. And look, Kirk, I know you expect the Organians to be sitting by, waiting to put a smackdown on any Klingons trying to wage war against you, but they've got more important things to do, like pretending to herd goats. The Organians have nothing better to do. Honestly, I think they just wrote themselves into a corner on that, considering we never really see the Organians do anything for the rest of the series. And no, I don't count their appearance in Enterprise, that was just stupid. Pretty sure one of the video games, Starfleet Command I think, wrote it that the Mirror Universe invaded and killed the Organians. Somehow. Anyway, Bryce freaks out for a moment because of the disorienting effect of the wormhole, but Kirk gets her to calm down and they fly towards the station. Back on board the Enterprise, Sulu is in command. How's it going down there, Scotty? Not good, Mr. Sulu. I've had to take the mains offline, and I cannot tell you when we'll have him back. I mean, the service guy said he'd be here between 10 and 4, so who the hell knows? Ensign Bearclaw is upset about this whole thing. We can't just die out here. The Klingons killed my father. But he might be alive if Bryce's father hadn't fouled up. And I've got to pay them both back for that. And clearly I need to punish her for the mistake her dad did that I somehow know about, despite us not even knowing they were dead until we got out here, and then us almost getting killed in the same way they did because of the ambush strategy the Klingons employed. I make so much sense. Saavik, in the meantime, enters the wormhole area in her shuttlecraft and reports the Klingon space station to the ship, telling them that she's going to begin a reconnaissance survey of it. However, Uhura makes note that she made no effort to scramble her transmission, and thus the Klingons will detect her. She did that on purpose, Uhura, to draw attention to herself and away from the captain. Yes, because clearly they're expecting people to just be floating around outside the station inside of a friggin' wormhole, and thus getting herself killed will prevent them from noticing that. Brilliant strategy!
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
I mean, for crying out loud, if their scanners are so sensitive, or at least on the lookout for people, that they detect some people out there anyway, what's the point? They've just drawn attention to both of them. Anyway, the Klingons dock with the station, led by Captain Koloth, aka the Klingon from the classic episode The Trouble with Tribbles. By a black miracle, the Enterprise survived our first attack, but on my honor, she will not withstand a second. I go to my command central. Resume your stations, and await news of our glorious victory. I shall have my vengeance on Kirk, and I assure you, it'll be no tribble at all. Konam, the Klingon from the first issue who didn't like all this, also walks past Koloth. This will be a day long remembered, eh, Helmsman Konam? Yes, Captain. Gods, he knows! Yes, and Klingons are very well known for their subterfuge over matters of betrayal and disloyalty by their subordinates. Isn't that right, Commander Kruge? How did you handle an officer who didn't obey orders properly? The Klingons detect the shuttlecraft and, of course, did not detect the other two, so this entire exercise was pointless. And again, I just realized the further dumbness of this plan. They didn't know there was a space station in the wormhole, so why the hell did they just beam two people randomly into it? What were they expecting to encounter? Anyway, the Klingons decide to capture the shuttle, sending out some scout vessels at it, And I've got to admit, I know we hadn't really established the design aesthetic of the Klingons yet, beyond the old D7 cruisers at this point, and the Katinga class, which is basically just a more detailed D7. But man, oh man, do these things not look like Klingon ships at all. Hey guys, do you think that after 10 years of this show and an entire month dedicated to Star Trek and quibbling about details like that I've established that I'm a massive nerd yet? With the airlock opened to let the ships out, Kirk and Bryce fly in before they close again, Kirk explaining that this was his plan all along. His plan that made a lot of assumptions and could have required the two of them to thumb it back to the Enterprise if it didn't pan out. Unfortunately, the Klingons were apparently ready for this, and a few of them are waiting for the pair, opening fire. While Kirk struggles with some Klingons, Bryce grabs a phaser and aims it at one. "Now freeze or I'll—" "Will you, human? Remember that we not only outnumber you, but that we are gracious to our allies, and unfailingly savage to our foes. Allow me to tell you more reasons why you should shoot me." Bryce is freaking out, which I find kind of hilarious since in the previous issue, Kirk specifically called out how her psych profile said she was calm under extreme pressure. "Give me the phaser, human! You have nothing to fear from us!" Another thing Klingons are known for, hypnotizing their enemy into handing over their weapons. Kirk gets her to snap out of it by reminding her of how her father was killed by the Klingons, which sends her into a berserker rage and just shooting all of them. Even Kirk has to yell at her to cease fire. You better take this, sir." "Why?" "I froze, right when you needed me." So on top of all the other stupid parts of this plan, you've now got a panicky ensign who thinks she shouldn't be holding a gun while they're right inside of an enemy stronghold without reinforcements. This is gonna be the Starfleet Bay of Pigs, isn't it? Kirk reassures that it's okay, that even he froze once while referencing an old episode, helping her see the need to keep her phaser at the ready. And apparently Kirk decided it was important that they bring their nice toasty mission jackets with them, along with the thruster suits. Not that that's really that unbelievable, just seems kind of a bulky thing to have on a commando raid is all. Back on board the Enterprise, we get a log entry from Sulu to remind us that they're still in this story. McCoy stops by to bug him about it, especially since they can't risk trying to contact the captain on the communicator. "I wouldn't worry, Doc. The captain will come back. He always does." "That's what I always thought about Spock." I mean, technically he never left the ship when he died, so... "Remember," Spock said. "Remember? Remember what? I swear to God, if his last words to me were to haunt me about those $10 I owed him." Sulu contemplates things. "I'm in command of the Enterprise. Until the captain comes back. I've proved myself fit for command over and over. So when will Starfleet give me a command of my own?" What I find so amusing about this is that this came out only a few months before Star Trek 3, long before they gave Sulu command of the Excelsior, so some people were already thinking this far back about giving Sulu a command. Back over to Saavik, she evades the Klingon patrols as best as she can, but then her shuttle suddenly vanishes. "Federation shuttlecraft are now equipped with cloaking device. Saturate area before you can change heading." Oh, well, that explains that. Wait, what? This isn't just the Klingons making an assumption, by the way. When they continue their attack, Saavik confirms both her warp drive and the cloaking device are disabled. You know, cloaking devices, that well-known Federation technology that certainly isn't banned by treaty or anything. It's not even some essential plot point that they have that. The shuttle cloaks, and it doesn't change anything. What the hell? Like, I can't get over this. Why does this shuttle have a cloaking device and not the Enterprise? Do you know how many situations could be resolved more quickly if the Enterprise was equipped with one? No, just stick it in the friggin' shuttle that can't even go to warp on its own. It needs an accessory to do that. Speaking of that accessory, she ejects the shuttle from the sled, thinking it's curious that without the warp field it creates, she should be returning to normal space. But that's not happening, so something the Klingons are doing is causing all this. Still, they capture Saavik's shuttle and bring her back to the station. Inside said station, Kirk and Bryce make their way to an area with its most complex machinery, where they suspect the device that stabilizes the wormhole is located. They're unable to find it, but Konam runs into them, explaining that he was the one who sent out an energy wave to them that helped them locate the wormhole to begin with. "Yes, there's something wrong with me. The killing and destruction done by my people have always revulsed me. I want to kill and destroy things for personal reasons, not because of some cultural imperative. Before he can tell them which device is the stabilizer, they're attacked by a patrol. Saavik is brought to Koloth, who is quickly informed about the other two who were pinned down. Indeed, the patrol had been following Konam on Koloth's orders. Fair enough if he thought it would lead to proof that he was a traitor like this, just seems a little more subtle than I'm used to Klingons being when it comes to this kind of thing. Also, kinda lucky for Koloth that they were indeed intruders that he could betray himself to, if you call that lucky. Anyway, with the Klingons distracted by this news, Saavik manages to grab a disruptor from one of her guards and open fire on something that causes a smokescreen. Back near the stabilizer, Kirk holds off their attackers while Bryce and Konam place a bomb. Place it here for maximum hands off, Klingon. I still don't trust you. Sure, you're helping me plant an explosive, but I've already had one Klingon try to hypnotize me today, mister. Kirk manages to contact the Enterprise and request an emergency beam out, but there's something interfering with the transporters, so they can't get a lock. Saavik contacts Kirk too, wanting to join up, but Kirk sends her elsewhere while Konam gets shot. Ha! A clever ruse of getting shot by your own men! I'm on to you, Klingon. Pardon me, is this the transporter room? Who are you? Oh, I'm from the temp agency. Oh, thank Kalis. You would not believe how much paperwork is actually involved with the transporter room, and we have needed help for months. She nerve pinches the Klingon unconscious and uses the Klingon transporters to beam Kirk, Bryce, Konam, and herself over to the Enterprise, since the interference doesn't run both ways. McCoy is on hand in the transporter room as Kirk tells him to help the injured Konam. I've never operated on a Klingon before. Oh well, I'm sure it won't be a useful skill at any point. I mean, what are the odds that I'd have to save the life of, like, the Klingon Chancellor or something? Kirk and Saavik head up to the bridge while the bomb goes off on the station, taking out the stabilizer and shifting them into normal space. Kirk contacts them. This is Captain James T. Kirk, Koloth. Give it up. It's over. Wait, didn't you have a smooth forehead the last time we met? And how did I even know it was you in command? I think not, Captain, as you and your accursed Federation will soon find out. For as you know, we Klingons live by our own rules. And die by them as well. And Koloth taps a single button on his chair that blows up the entire station. Okay, let's unpack this. This station, which according to the comic has enough firepower on it to destroy the Enterprise, according to Kirk's own words from the first issue, is dragged into normal space but is otherwise undamaged along with several Klingon battlecruisers docked with it right in front of the Enterprise, which earlier did not even have main power online for the phasers to work, and Kirk says that this plot, whatever it is now over. And Koloth decides that instead of opening fire and laying waste to the Enterprise, and again, even if the station was damaged, they still outnumber the damaged Enterprise with fully operational vessels, plus a full complement of scout vessels that were able to take out the shuttle to add even more firepower to this assault. Koloth decides to self-destruct the station and the battle cruisers, utilizing the single button on his chair that does that, which I will admit at least has a little cover over it so that someone won't just accidentally press it if they trip and fall on it, yet also someone else could still press it if they were quick and knew what they were doing. The layers of unbelievably stupid piled onto that are painful to behold. I only wish the Klingons had a phrase for enduring such pain.
Experience Vish.
With this matter resolved, Kirk orders them to return to Earth, but Uhura says they're picking up a strong transmission. And so our comic ends with an announcement from the Klingons. Transmitting this signal throughout the known galaxy, so all may know the treachery of the backstabbing Federation. I, Kalis the Fourth, Emperor of all Klingons, hereby declare war on the Federation. A war caused by the savage, aggressive acts of Captain James T. Kirk and the Starship Enterprise. How dare some of your ships get destroyed in a sneak attack and then make us pointlessly blow ourselves up? You are the quintessential devil in these matters, Kirk. This comic sucks. It is by far not the worst Star Trek story out there, but there are a lot of leaps in logic, especially at the end with Koloth's self-destruct out of nowhere. Stuff like the cloaking device on the shuttle are bizarre continuity hiccups for no reason at all, and frankly it stretches credulity a little bit how easily Kirk and Bryce were able to make it so far into the station without detection or problem until Konam apparently gave them away. The character bits are not that great, going a little over the top in a few spots, including a bit I didn't really recap where Kirk snaps at McCoy to heal Konam after his remark about Klingon anatomy. I joke about Konam, but honestly, he's an interesting idea for a character. While I will often reject the Planet of Hats theory about Trek aliens because we usually see such a small sampling of any particular race, and frankly, in my humble opinion, them being aliens, they will have an alien way of thinking associated with their culture, but Klingons are probably the race we know the most about in Star Trek after so many series, and having someone like this who utterly rejects their thoughts about violence and war and whatnot is cool. He actually would eventually join the Enterprise crew as an honorary Starfleet member, and this was before The Next Generation introduced Worf to us, where the dynamic itself was very different, because in that series, the Klingons and Federation were at peace and allies, versus here, where they're always teetering on the edge of war. And by the end of this issue, war declared. But yeah, this story has a ton of problems, not even mentioning the art, which is serviceable, but Kirk's likeness is off a lot of the time, and the coloring is pretty dreary. I'll give it this though, a lot of Star Trek comics seem to struggle with keeping the Enterprise looking right, but this one actually seems to do a good job keeping it consistent. Next time, Star Trektember continues with the final movie adaptation comic. Not Insurrection, not Nemesis, but the 2009 reboot film's adaptation. Well, I'm not entirely sure. Well, what do you think he is? Well, his DNA is a perfect match for yours. I would say a clone, except if he is, then he is the most perfect clone I've ever seen. Usually, when a clone is artificially aged up, there are telltale genetic markers on the DNA to indicate that, that's what's happened to them. But he doesn't have any of those. Check out his clothes. Could he be a time traveler? Like my past self come into the future or something? His age pretty much matches yours. If he was a time traveler, he would have to be from very recent. And well, those clothes are from what you used to wear. Look, I hate to ask this, but could I be a clone? Like, when Vice kidnapped me so many years ago and the others rescued me, could they have grabbed the clone instead? Or when I went on that walking tour trying to find magic users, could a clone have come back instead of me? No. I worked for Vice during that time. If he had cloned you, I would have known about it. And recall that we did a medical checkup after you got back from that little tour. I would have detected something. Parallel universe, then. possible, but... No. If he was from another universe, there would also be telltale signs from that too. There's nothing. Is there anything, any clues as to where he came from? Well, there are some stray energy particles that I can't identify, but... Well, those could just be from the energy weapon that was fired on him. Is he injured? Well, no, but look at his clothes. Obviously he didn't burn off parts of those himself. Well, I suppose we could just ask him how this happened. So... Hi! I don't suppose you'd like to tell us, well, anything. I can't remember exactly. What do you remember? I remember names. I remember being cold and in a lot of pain. I don't remember how I got here. Do you know who you are? I think I'm Linkara, right? That's what we're trying to figure out. Because you see, I'm Linkara too. Who? What am I? For now, you're our guest. And this is your home. Home.